In 1970s, I was asked to give workshops in various military hospitals on, at the time, was called Vietnam Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder. I was working with some of the staff there and teaching them about what they call post-traumatic stress disorder and trying to explain to them that, post-traumatic stress disorder isn't a disorder. It should be just called post-traumatic stress, because 99% of anybody that goes into combat is experiencing post-traumatic stress. It's a normal reaction to being in an abnormal environment. And that's when I first started explaining this to people. They're experiencing abnormal situations. They're dealing with those abnormal situations, which create a lot of stress, in a normal way, such as when they come back, they're having nightmares, they're hypervigilant, all of the different things they may be overly concerned about, and that kind of is a normal reaction. Now, if you give them time to normalize themselves to being back in the neighborhood, then the post-traumatic stress dissipates and they get back into living their normal lives. I explained to the psychiatrist and psychologist, you really shouldn't be medicating them because they have a normal brain. And once you medicate these people, what happens is it's much, much harder to work with them, because now you're working with somebody whose brain functioning is chemically, physiologically changed by the medications. I was at a conference. I was at the local community college. I was on a panel, and it was a scholarship fund called the Heroes Fund. And the college called me up and said, "Oh, we're having a guest speaker. He's the chief psychiatrist from the VA clinic right up the road." So I waited to the last 3 minutes of his presentation. I raised my hand, and I said, "I have a question for you, doctor. What percentage of the veterans you see as chief psychiatrist at the VA clinic, do you medicate?" He says, "Well, I only see the most difficult patients that people have problems with." I said, we all see the most difficult patients. What percentage do you medicate? 98%. That's what really kind of made me aware that these people do not belong running mental health. They don't know what they're doing. The International Combat Stress Conference is the longest running conference in the world on combat stress, in the world. So obviously, and I started it 20 years ago, so nobody's done this before. A large part of that workshop was looking at both sides of issues, looking at the effects of medication, looking at the effects when they're not medicated, and which is more beneficial. The conference evolved into integrative treatment is the way to go. That's what it evolved to. Now, integrative treatment doesn't mean you medicate somebody. That's what the whole conference really evolved to. The best approaches, the various approaches to helping people normalize themselves when they come back from combat. So you really have to do a thorough physical workup on somebody, and then you put them in a program. It's an individualized rehab program that you put them in. It's unique for every single person because every single person has their own needs. Give them the realization that you're not giving up on me. I went on, I fought a war, and I come back, but you're still caring about me. You're still as interested in my training to get back to the neighborhood as you were my training to fight a battle. That's what I like to see, just the genuine caring and concern for these people. And giving somebody a pill and spending 10 minutes with them in an office, there's no demonstration of caring. They've never medicated to the extent they're medicating now. I mean, between 2005, 2011, I believe, the amount of psychiatric medications has increased 700%. It's ridiculous. And the incidence of suicides has coincided with the increased amount of psychiatric medications. As long as psychiatry is in charge of mental health in the military as well as the civilian world, you're not going to see much change because they feel obligated to medicate people, and a large part of that has to do with the amount of money they're making. In any other organization, whether it's in the civilian world, if you constantly fail at your job and you're in charge of IBM or Ford or a big company or whatever, and you're constantly failing and you're losing business and you're not successful, what happens? You get fired. What happens in the military if you're a company commander and you take your company out and your casualties and your company are higher than all the other company commanders? You get relieved of your duties. Why has not psychiatry in the military been relieved of their duties to lead mental health? Because they're constantly failing. Any other organization would fire them. It took me 2 years to convince Congress to hold hearings on February 24, 2010, to look at the relationship between psychiatric medication and suicide in the military. It came out of the Combat Stress Conference. I've invited for years different political figures to attend the Combat Stress Conference. Congressmen, senators, Secretary of the Navy. I invited all, and they came. And there was one congressman at the time who was the chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee in Congress. I convinced him to please hold hearings, and he heard what was going on at the conference. He heard about the relationship between psychiatric medication and suicide, and he agreed to do it, and he did it. And it was incredible. I was told by prominent physicians, this has never happened before. Congress never had. We've been trying to do this for years, and you made it happen. This has never happened before. Congress never had hearings looking at the relationship between psychiatric meds and suicide. I don't know. There's probably a lot of people out there doing what I'm doing, but this has become a real crusade